You ever build something in your backyard that just feels like a masterpiece? Like, forget your job, forget the bills, forget that one neighbor who reports you for grass being 2 inches too tall. You're the king of your own little empire? That was me. My castle wasn't made of stone or glory. It was made of fire bricks, oak logs, and mozzarella. Yeah, I built a pizza oven, a 4-foot wide, fire breathing dome of pure passion. It all started because, honestly, I was tired of floppy cardboard box pizza. You know the kind, grease puddles that could fuel a small car, crust so limp it needs therapy. I wanted the real deal, the leopard spotted, blistered edge, wood fired magic. So I went all in. 3 months of YouTube tutorials, Roman design research, and arguments with my wife over why we need another load of mortar later. Boom. The oven was complete. This wasn't just an oven. It was art. A 900-degree temple to carbs and happiness. Friday nights turned into events. The whole cul-de-sac knew. When the scent of oak smoke rolled through the air, it was pizza o'clock at Mark's. Neighbors brought chairs, coolers, and chaos. Kids ran around with cheese strings hanging out of their mouths. We were building community, one slice at a time. Mrs. Garza from next door swore my margarita was better than anything in Naples. Mr. Chung just grunted pepperoni every time like a man who knew what he wanted. And me? I stood there, flour on my arms, bandana on my forehead, feeling like a suburban Tony Stark, if Tony Stark's superpower was gluten. For a while, it was perfect. No drama, just laughter, good food, and the faint hum of suburbia vibing in peace. I even thought, hey, maybe this is what being a grown-up feels like. You work hard, you build something cool, and everyone just enjoys it. Yeah, about that. Because every kingdom eventually attracts a villain. One Friday evening, right as the golden sunset hit and the first pizza came out of the oven, I heard it. A faint electric hum, like a mosquito that pays property taxes. I turned, and there she was. Brenda Miller, HOA president, clipboard commander, ruler of petty suburbia. She didn't walk up. Oh no! She rolled in on a pristine white golf cart, like she was leading a one-woman parade of misery. Sunglasses on, lips pursed, eyes locked on my pizza party like I'd just summoned Satan through sourdough. And then she did it. She took pictures. Flash on, no words. Just that smug satisfaction that only HOA people get when they think they found a violation. The entire yard froze. Kids stopped chewing. Mrs. Garza's smile vanished mid-slice. And Brenda? She turned her cart around. The engine humming like a Bond villain's exit cue. My wife leaned over. What was that about? I didn't know then. But, spoiler, that quiet moment was the sound of the war drums starting. Because in the HOA world, every happy thing is apparently a fire hazard. And my fire-breathing kingdom was about to be branded public enemy number 1. But if Brenda thought a few pictures and a sternly worded email could put out my fire, she was in for a surprise. Because the next morning, the real battle began with just 4 words that would ignite it all. Official notice of violation. You ever open an email so passive-aggressive that your blood pressure spikes just reading the subject line? Yeah, that was my Saturday morning. Subject: official notice of violation. And it came straight from the digital lair of Brenda Miller, Supreme Commander of the Oakwood Creek HOA. I'm not kidding. This thing read like it was written by a lawyer who moonlights as a Bond villain. It started all nice and corporate. Dear Mr. Jensen, it has come to the attention of the Oakwood Creek HOA. And that's when I knew I was screwed. When someone says it has come to our attention, it means they've already made up their mind and whatever's coming next isn't good. They called my beloved oven an unapproved exterior structure and potential fire hazard, like I'd built a nuclear reactor in the backyard instead of a glorified brick dome. Oh, and they didn't stop there. They hit me with a $100 fine and told me to cease operation immediately. Cease operation like I was running a black market pizza cartel instead of family pizza night? I read that email 3 times, each pass turning my confusion into rage. Unapproved structure? I built that thing with my own 2 hands. Fire hazard? Lady, it's safer than half the gas grills in this neighborhood. Nuisance? Yeah, a nuisance of deliciousness. I tried to calm down. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding, right? Brenda was new to the neighborhood leadership scene. Maybe she didn't realize my oven wasn't some random smoke-belching disaster. So, like a responsible adult, I called her. She picked up on the second ring, all crisp and cold like she'd been waiting. Brenda Miller. Hi, Brenda. This is Mark Jensen from 124 Willow Lane. I think there's been a mix-up. There's no mix-up, Mr. Jensen, she said, slicing through my optimism like a hot pizza cutter. The notice is perfectly clear. Okay, but I tried again. The oven's been here for 2 years. It's perfectly safe. It brings the community together. Mr. Jensen, she interrupted, your personal feelings are irrelevant. The bylaws require pre-approval for exterior modifications. Was it approved? I stuttered. Well, the last president, Jim, saw it, and Jim was lax. She snapped. That's why this neighborhood's standards have slipped. I'm here to fix that. And then the moment I'll never forget. She called it a barbecue. The rules are the rules, she said. You'll need to remove your little barbecue immediately. That word barbecue wasn't just wrong, it was an insult, like calling Michelangelo's David a rock guy. She hung up before I could say another word. I just stood there, phone in hand, staring into space, wondering how one woman could pack that much smugness into a 30-second phone call. And that's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a declaration of war. So, I did what any sane man under HOA siege would do. I prepped for battle. I printed photos, safety specs, and diagrams. I was going to show up at the next HOA meeting and prove my oven was the safest, most wholesome thing in Oakwood Creek. Because if Brenda wanted a war, she was going to get one in 900 degrees Fahrenheit. But little did I know, walking into that HOA meeting was like walking into the lion's den, and Brenda had already sharpened her claws. All right, picture this. I walk into the Oakwood Creek clubhouse like a man on a mission. I've got a folder thick enough to stop a bullet, full of diagrams, safety photos, and printouts, proving my pizza oven wasn't a fire hazard. It was a culinary masterpiece. This wasn't just a meeting anymore. This was my courtroom drama moment. I was ready to defend my doughy honor. But here's the thing about HOA meetings. They're not run on justice or logic. They're run on boredom, beige walls, and whatever power trip Brenda Miller was currently riding. The room smelled like chlorine from the pool next door. A sad pod of decaf coffee sat in the corner, radiating defeat. About 15 people were scattered across metal folding chairs. Most of them probably just wanted to get home and watch Wheel of Fortune. And there she was, Brenda, sitting at the head of the table, clipboard in hand, expression sharp enough to slice salami. Her hair was helmet perfect, her glasses gleamed, and her aura screamed, I write strongly worded emails for fun. When it was my turn to speak, I stood tall, cleared my throat, and started my presentation like I was pitching on Shark Tank. Good evening, everyone. My name's Mark Jensen, 124 Willow Lane. I'd like to address the notice regarding my outdoor pizza oven. I showed pictures of the oven under construction, explained the airflow design, the chimney clearance, the fire brick material, even how it's safer than a standard propane grill. I threw in a few heartfelt lines about community, how Friday nights brought the neighbors together, how kids laughed and families shared food. I was basically trying to sell peace, love, and mozzarella. By the time I finished, I thought I'd nailed it. A couple of neighbors even nodded like, yeah, that's reasonable. And then Brenda leaned forward. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Jensen. she said with a smile that could curdle milk. However, what Mr. Jensen fails to appreciate is liability. What happens when a child burns themselves on this so-called community oven? What happens when an ember catches fire to a neighbor's property? We're not here to cater to one man's hobby at the expense of everyone else's safety. She twisted my words so hard they probably got whiplash. She took my community gathering and turned it into reckless endangerment. You could feel the energy in the room shift. The treasurer, a guy who looked like he hadn't blinked since 1998, mumbled something about insurance risk. The secretary typed like she was writing the next HOA constitution. I tried to push back. With all due respect, Brenda, that's not what's happening here. I've taken every safety precaution possible. But nope, she cut me off. The board will now vote. And just like that, boom, denied. No debate, no discussion. Just bam. Appeal rejected. Fine increased to $250. The gavel dropped, metaphorically and emotionally. I walked out of that meeting fuming. The neighbors avoided eye contact. Even the coffee pot looked ashamed. That was the day I learned something crucial about HOAs. They don't run on reason, they run on control. Brenda didn't want safety. She wanted obedience. And I wasn't about to bow down to a golf cart dictator. But Brenda wasn't done, because when petty power meets persistence, things always escalate. And the next time she struck, she brought backup.
You ever have one of those moments when you realize your enemy is not just petty, but professionally petty? Yeah, that was Brenda's next move. Because apparently, hitting me with a $250 fine wasn't enough satisfaction. Nope, she wanted a spectacle. It was a normal Tuesday. I was working from home halfway through a boring Zoom meeting when I heard a deep rumble outside. Not a car, not the garbage truck. This was something bigger. I looked out the window and my heart stopped. A fire truck. Full-sized. Lights flashing, siren off, but lights on because humiliation, of course, has to come with flair. 2 firefighters and a fire captain got out, followed by a guy in a white uniform shirt. My stomach dropped faster than my Wi-Fi signal on laundry day. The whole neighborhood started peeking through blinds. You know how it is. One fire truck, and suddenly everyone's a detective. I walked outside, trying to look calm, even though I was mentally screaming. Can I help you, officers? The captain, nice guy, mid-40s, clearly exhausted, nodded politely. Got a call about an unapproved and potentially unsafe fire pit, sir. And I just blinked. You mean my pizza oven? He sighed. Looks that way. They followed me to the backyard. I felt like I was leading an inspection of Area 51. They tapped the bricks, checked the chimney, even measured the distance from the fence. Meanwhile, Brenda's golf cart was parked at the end of my driveway, her phone out, documenting everything like she was filming an episode of HOA, Civilians Court Edition. The whole neighborhood started peeking through blinds. You know how it is. One fire truck, and suddenly everyone's a detective. The firefighters took their time. Professional, thorough. And then the captain looked at me, waited until his men were out of earshot, and said quietly, "Look, between you and me, this oven's built better than the one at my station. You're fine." Finally, some sanity. So you can tell the HOA that, right? He chuckled, shaking his head. "Sorry, sir. It's not a city code issue. We have no jurisdiction over HOA bylaws. My report just says it's not a fire hazard. But they can still fine you for violations. My hands are tied." And just like that, Brenda's plan clicked. She hadn't called the fire department because she thought I was dangerous. She called them because she wanted a scene. She wanted the flashing lights, the neighbors watching, the embarrassment. It wasn't about safety. It was control through public shaming. By the time the truck rolled away, the rumor mill was already grinding. I overheard Mrs. Garza later saying her friend heard someone say, "I don't know, maybe it's unsafe. What if it affects someone's asthma?" Brenda had planted the seed. Now she was watering it with gossip. And just when I thought she'd be satisfied with that circus, I got hit again. Another email, another violation, another fine. This time for excessive smoke. Except I hadn't even used the oven since her first notice. The smoke was imaginary. The violation? Total fiction. It was official. This wasn't rule enforcement. It was harassment with a clipboard. I knew then I couldn't fight this with reason. If Brenda was going to weaponize bureaucracy, I'd have to learn her language and beat her at her own game. Because when a petty tyrant pushes you too far, there are two options: fold under pressure or flip the script. And trust me, my next move was going to burn brighter than my oven ever could.
You know it's bad when your mail carrier looks sorry for you. That's when you know you're about to receive something evil wrapped in legal stationery. It was a Wednesday afternoon. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and then, bam, certified mail. Patty, my usually cheerful mail lady, handed me the envelope like she was delivering a court summons from Satan himself. "Sorry, hun," she said. "I think this one's serious." She wasn't kidding. I tore it open, and there it was. Thick paper, fancy letterhead, and a law firm name that sounded fake but totally wasn't. Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. You know you're in trouble when the lawyer's name sounds like a bad joke. It was a cease and desist, a full-on legal nuke. It accused me of flagrant and continued disregard for community bylaws and referenced the fire department visit as proof of my reckless endangerment. Let's pause. Reckless endangerment. Lady, I was cooking pizza, not launching fireworks into the HOA clubhouse. The letter demanded that I dismantle and permanently remove the offending structure within 30 days, or they'd take me to court, remove it themselves, and slap a lien on my house. That's right, over pizza. A lien on my house. I sank onto my porch steps, the letter shaking in my hands. My wife, Sarah, came out and saw the look on my face. She didn't even have to ask. "It's bad, huh?" "They're threatening to take the house," I said flatly. That night, I barely slept. The oven that once brought me joy now loomed in the backyard like a cursed relic. I told Sarah I was going to tear it down. She hugged me tight and said softly, "I get it, but don't let her take your happiness from you, Mark." Easier said than done. The stress was chewing through me like a rat in a bag of flour. My head pounded, my heart raced. I went to the doctor for a checkup, and sure enough, high blood pressure. "You need to find a relaxing hobby." Buddy, that was my hobby. It was irony so painful I could have been in a sitcom. My stress relief project had turned into my stress factory. That night, I sat in my living room, staring at that cursed letter on the coffee table, and I wasn't angry anymore. I was hollow. And then, at about 2 a.m., something in me snapped. I opened my laptop, eyes bloodshot, heart pounding, and started digging through every HOA rule, city code, and county ordinance I could find. I was like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure, but instead of chasing history, I was hunting loopholes. And that's when I found it. Buried deep in the County Commercial Code, Section 4B, subsection 12, was a single glorious paragraph. It said that any cooking equipment certified for commercial use by the county health department and fire marshal is considered a compliant commercial appliance. And get this, such certification overrides all HOA bylaws. I read it 3 times. My eyes widened, my jaw dropped, my pulse shot up like caffeine overdose. I wasn't beaten. I wasn't done. I just found the golden cheat code. At exactly 2:14 a.m., with caffeine in my veins and chaos in my soul, I leaned back from my laptop and said 6 words that changed everything. Fine, I'll make it a business. If Brenda wanted paperwork, inspections, and red tape, she was about to drown in it. This wasn't revenge by vandalism. This was revenge by compliance. Malicious compliance. The next morning, I put on my game face and started assembling what I called Operation Weekend Slice. My goal? Turn my backyard pizza oven into a fully licensed, government-certified, legally bulletproof pizzeria. First stop, the county health department. Picture a beige office building that smelled like floor wax and despair. Behind a desk sat a woman named Miss Albright, who looked like she'd seen every dumb idea known to mankind. She peered at me over her glasses and said, "So, you want to start a commercial food business in your backyard?" "Exactly," I said, sliding a folder across her desk. Inside was a detailed diagram of my oven setup, a proposed food safety plan, and a list of modifications I was prepared to make. She squinted, half amused, half impressed. "You understand what this entails, right? You'll need a dedicated hand-washing station, a 3-compartment sink, NSF-certified containers, a food safety certification." "Done," I said, way too fast. She smirked. We'll see." That was the start of my transformation. My garage went from suburban man cave to industrial prep zone overnight. I installed a stainless steel sink so big it looked like it belonged in a diner, ran new hot water lines, bought a commercial-grade refrigerator, labeled everything, and kept temperature logs like a mad scientist. Then I took the 8-hour ServSafe certification course, passed it with a 98%. Because if I was going to go down this road, I wasn't stopping halfway. But I wasn't done yet. I still needed the final boss of approvals, the fire marshal. So I called him. "Captain Davies, remember me? The guy with the pizza oven your crew inspected?" There was a pause, then a chuckle. "You again? What's up?" "I'd like to schedule a commercial appliance inspection." "A what?" "A commercial inspection for my wood-fired oven. I want it certified." You could practically hear him grin through the phone. "Son, you're really trying to poke the bear, aren't you?" "Not poke it. I'm going to feed it pizza." He came out the next week. I showed him the Class K fire extinguisher I'd installed, the emergency signage, even the laminated fire safety plan hanging next to the oven. He walked around, clipboard in hand, inspecting every inch. Finally, he clicked his pen, scribbled his signature, and said, "Congratulations, Mr. Denson. You are now the proud operator of a fully certified commercial cooking appliance." Boom. Just like that, Brenda's bylaws were toast. But I wasn't stopping there. I filed for an LLC, Weekend Slice LLC. Got a business license, a state tax ID, the whole enchilada, or in this case, a whole pizza. Sarah, my wife, wasn't thrilled when she saw the credit card bill, about $4,000 deep. But when I looked her in the eye and said, "This isn't just about pizza anymore. It's about standing up to bullies," she just nodded and said, "Then let's make it worth it." And make it worth it I would. Because at this point, the paperwork fortress was nearly complete. Every form filed, every certification framed, and Brenda, she had no clue the trap was being built right under her nose. Because when the dough's ready, it's time for the bake, and my grand reveal was going to hit Oakwood Creek hotter than my 900-degree oven. All right, here's where things go from petty neighborhood feud to Netflix-worthy act of culinary vengeance. By now, my paperwork fortress was thicker than a deep dish crust. I had my business license, fire certification, health department approval, even a laminated ServSafe certificate that practically sparkled in the sunlight. Brenda had been poking the bear for months, and I was done hiding. It was time to poke back. The battleground? The Oakwood Creek Neighborhood Facebook group. Oh yeah. the HOA's favorite gossip arena, the place where Brenda's minions liked posts about keeping standards high and banning unsightly lawn ornaments. So one Thursday evening, I typed up a post so perfectly polite it practically dripped with sarcasm. Hello, Oakwood Creek. I'm excited to announce the official grand opening of the Weekend Slice, a fully licensed, insured, and health department certified pizzeria operating right here in our neighborhood. Many of you have already enjoyed my pizzas over the years. Now it's official. We'll be open this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Come on down to 124 Willow Lane for fresh, hand-stretched, wood-fired pizza. All paperwork available upon request. I attached a picture of my glowing Grade A health certificate and my brand new business license. Then I hit post. And my God, the comment section exploded faster than a can of soda in a freezer. Within an hour, there were 100 reactions. Mrs. Garza was first. I knew this man's pizza was too good to be illegal. Mr. Chung commented, 3 pepperonis and 1 margarita for me. Even the lurkers can crawling out. Way to stick it to the HOA! About time someone did this. Brenda who? By midnight, I had 50 pre-orders. The people had spoken, and they wanted carbs. Saturday arrived like Judgment Day, except this time, I was the judge, jury, and pizza executioner. The smell of oak smoke rolled through the neighborhood like freedom itself. Sarah worked the cash box, the kids took drink orders, and I was slinging pizzas like a man possessed. The line of neighbors stretched down my driveway. Laughter, music, clinking soda cans. It felt like a block party from before HOA tyranny. Every pizza I pulled from that oven was more than food. It was defiance, topped with mozzarella. And then at exactly 1:30 p.m., cue the boss music. Brenda's white golf cart appeared at the end of the street. Slow, menacing, like the world's least intimidating tank. She rolled closer, sunglasses glinting, lips pursed, eyes locked on me like a hawk spotting its prey. And then, of course, behind her came the real punchline. A police cruiser. The whole crowd went silent. Forks paused mid-bite. Even the kids stopped mid-sip of lemonade. Brenda stepped out, pointing at me with the righteous fury of a villain who thinks she's the hero. "Officers," she barked, "this man is running an illegal commercial operation from his home. Shut him down immediately." The cops exchanged a look. The guy sighed. The woman pulled out a notepad. "Sir," she said, "we've received a complaint about an illegal commercial operation." I smiled, calm, collected, ready. "Of course, officer," I said. "Right this way." Because this was the moment I'd been waiting for. The trap was about to spring shut. Because when Brenda called in backup, she thought she was ending my little pizza rebellion. But in reality, she'd just RSVP'd to her own public defeat. And everyone was invited. All right, so there I was, standing in front of a roaring oven, apron dusted with flour, surrounded by neighbors, cameras, and the sweet smell of victory just waiting to bake. Across from me, Brenda Miller, HOA overlord and part-time fun assassin. Behind her, 2 cops, who clearly did not sign up for this episode of Suburban Madness. This was it, the final boss battle. Brenda pointed her trembling finger at me like I'd personally offended every HOA bylaw ever written. "That's him, officers. He's running an illegal restaurant right out of his home. I demand you shut this down immediately." The crowd collectively held its breath. You could practically hear the pepperoni sizzling in suspense. The male officer looked at me, then at her. "Sir," he said calmly, "can we see your documentation?" And that was my moment. I smiled. Not just any smile. The kind you smile when you've spent months getting crushed by bureaucracy, only to rise like a phoenix armed with laminated receipts. "Absolutely, officer," I said, untying my apron. "Right this way." I walked them over to a small post I'd installed next to my prep table, my wall of malicious compliance. Framed, sealed, and mounted under a sheet of plexiglass, each document gleamed like a trophy. I pointed to each one like I was hosting the Price is Right edition, HOA.
Here's my LLC registration, the weekend slice, fully filed with the state. Here's my business license, paid in full. This one's my county health department certification, grade A, by the way. And last but definitely not least, the fire marshal's commercial appliance certification, Code 4B, subsection 12, which, according to county law, supersedes any and all HOA bylaws. The officer leaned in, read each document carefully, and nodded. His partner looked impressed. Then, in a moment so cinematic it could have had its own soundtrack, the officer turned to Brenda and said, "Ma'am, he's fully compliant. Everything here checks out. He's operating completely within the law." The silence that followed was legendary. You could have heard a mozzarella bubble pop. Brenda blinked, her face twitching like she was trying to compute what had just happened. "But the HOA, the bylaws, the smoke," she sputtered, her voice going up an octave with every word. "Ma'am," the officer interrupted, his tone firm now. "This is a civil matter between you and your association. From a legal standpoint, he's done nothing wrong. In fact, this setup is more documented than most food trucks. Please don't waste police resources with calls like this again." And with that, boom, the mic drop of suburbia. The crowd erupted. Mrs. Garza started clapping first, then Mr. Chung joined in, then the entire driveway was a full-blown standing ovation. Someone even yelled, "Viva la pizza!" Brenda stood frozen, red-faced, jaw clenched, completely defeated. Then, in a final act of pure suburban theater, she spun around, stomped back to her golf cart, and zoomed away like a storm cloud on wheels. The cops gave me a nod, one of those "respect man" nods, and left too. The air filled with cheers, laughter, and that glorious smell of victory mixed with garlic butter. I had done it. I had beaten the HOA, not by breaking the rules, but by understanding them better than they did. But the best part, Brenda's meltdown wasn't the end. Oh no, it was just the beginning of my legendary redemption arc.
So, picture this. One day, I'm just that guy with the pizza oven. The next, I'm a full-blown folk hero, like Paul Bunyan with a pizza peel. The showdown with Brenda went viral inside the neighborhood before sundown. I swear, by the time the cops had pulled away, the HOA gossip thread was running faster than fiber internet. Suddenly, everyone wanted a slice, not just of pizza, but of the story. Neighbors who had once pretended not to see me in the driveway were now waving like we'd been lifelong friends. Mr. Garza stopped by with folding chairs and declared my backyard neutral territory free of HOA tyranny. The Chens brought drinks. Even the Joneses, who hadn't spoken to anyone since 2016, showed up asking, "So, how much for a pepperoni?" The weekend slice had become the place. Every Saturday and Sunday, people lined up down the driveway, chatting, laughing, reconnecting. What used to be my little backyard hobby was now the new community hub. The oven roared, the music played, kids chased each other around, and Sarah worked the cash box like a pro. I even hired Leo, a high school kid from down the street, to take orders. Business was booming. And it wasn't just about the food. The vibe had shifted. The neighborhood had found its spark again, literally and figuratively. It wasn't long before I paid off the $4,000 I'd spent turning my oven into a fortress of legality. Everything after that, profit. And every dollar went into a college fund for Lily and Sam. You know, real legacy stuff. But Brenda, oh Brenda, was having the worst PR month of her life. Word of the pizza incident spread like wildfire. Every HOA gossip thread lit up with phrases like abusive power, public embarrassment, and my personal favorite, fire marshal certified. You could practically hear her reputation crumbling faster than a burnt crust. Then came the next HOA meeting. Record attendance. People packed the clubhouse like it was standing room only for a free concert. And who was leading the charge? None other than Maria Garza, my unofficial hype woman. She stood up, cleared her throat, and said, I'd like to motion for a vote of no confidence in President Brenda Miller for misconduct, harassment, and wasting police resources. Mic drop. The room went wild. Applause, cheers, a few gasps from the die-hard rule followers. When they finally voted, it wasn't even close. Brenda was out. She resigned the next day. Rumor has it she hasn't shown her face at any neighborhood event since. The new HOA board, led by people with actual souls, called me personally to apologize. They even passed a new bylaw nicknamed the Pizza Oven Proviso, which basically said outdoor cooking structures were welcome as long as they were safe and didn't disturb the peace. In other words, my pizza oven wasn't a hazard anymore, it was a blueprint. 6 months later, Oakwood Creek looked different. Happier, friendlier. You'd see neighbors chatting again, grilling again, living again. And every weekend, my driveway stayed busy. Not with drama, but with people laughing, eating, and celebrating a win for common sense. What started as an HOA nightmare had turned into a community miracle, and somewhere in that process, I'd gone from suburban target to local legend. But before I tell you how this wild saga wrapped up, let's talk about what I learned from it, because the real victory wasn't just about pizza, paperwork, or petty revenge. It was about something way bigger. 6 months after the showdown, the smell of oak smoke still drifted through Oakwood Creek every weekend. But now it wasn't rebellion. It was tradition. My driveway had turned into the unofficial town square. Kids sold lemonade, neighbors swapped gossip, and everyone agreed nothing brings peace like pizza. One Saturday, I stood there, watching the chaos, Leo calling out orders, Sarah handing out slices, Lily and Sam laughing at their lemonade stand, and it hit me. My backyard wasn't just a patch of grass anymore. It was a community, a living, breathing reminder that sometimes when life tries to burn you, you build something that burns brighter. That's the real plot twist here. Brenda thought she was shutting me down. She thought the rules were her weapon, but the truth? The rules were mine, once I learned how to use them. I didn't win because I rebelled. I won because I learned the system better than the system's biggest fan. I learned that the trick to fighting small-minded authority isn't breaking the rules, it's understanding them so deeply that you can turn them into your sword and shield. And here's the kicker. Once the war was over, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt proud. I'd built something real, something solid, not just a pizza oven, but proof that even in the most cookie-cutter, rule-choked suburbs, there's still room for creativity, passion, and community. Oh, and the pizza? Still undefeated. The petty pesto became a permanent menu item, my spicy little tribute to Brenda's campaign of chaos. It sold out every weekend, and whenever someone new asked about the name, I'd smile and say, let's just say it's HOA approved now. One afternoon, as I pulled another perfect margarita from the oven, I spotted something across the street, a new family moving in. They waved, I waved. A few minutes later, they wandered over and said, "We heard you're the pizza guy. Is it true you took down the HOA?" I laughed. Nah, I just opened for business. And that's the thing. The whole ordeal taught me that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's turning your frustration into something productive, something nobody can take from you. So yeah, Brenda tried to destroy my joy, but she ended up giving me something way better. A new life, a thriving little weekend business, and a story that spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Now, every time I fire up that oven, I think about that first night. The flash of Brenda's phone, the hush that fell over my party, the pit in my stomach, and I can't help but grin. Because I didn't just win, I rose. And that's the story of how one so-called fire hazard turned into a community revolution, fueled by spite, sealed with sauce, and finished with the sweet, sweet taste of victory. So, if you're out there dealing with a Brenda of your own, whether it's an HOA dictator, a nosy neighbor, or just someone trying to snuff out your spark, remember this. Don't fight fire with fire. Fight it with paperwork, persistence, and a little bit of pizza power. And hey, if this story made you laugh, cheer, or even crave a slice, hit that subscribe and share button because, trust me, the world needs more stories where the good guy wins, one brick oven at a time. Because in the end, they didn't just call my pizza oven a fire hazard, they called it a problem. And I called it a business. Mic drop.